Hi, I'm Jo.
And I'm Sarah, and welcome to episode 4 of the Society of Unpublished Authors.
This podcast is recorded in Western Sydney on the lands of the Darug people. We pay our respects to the original custodians and storytellers of this land and to elders past and present.
This episode, we are talking all about money and how much you should spend on chasing your dreams. And what are some things that we could spend money on in the creative writing field?
Yeah, so the first thing is on a creative writing course.
And how much are those?
Well, it really varies depending on where you do it, how long the course is, who the teacher is, and at what level you're actually going to be learning. So it could start from anywhere $30, $50, anywhere up to the hundreds. And if you go on and do something at university, obviously that could go into the thousands.
And have you done any courses that were really valuable? What did you learn?
Yeah, I've done quite a few courses. I've done some picture book writing courses, some writing for children courses. And interestingly, I also did a poetry course, which is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I wouldn't call myself a poet, but that just definitely unlocked a different part of my brain doing this poetry course with this guy called Rico Craig, who's amazing, one of the most creative people I've ever met. So I think don't be afraid of doing something that's slightly out of your normal area that you would write in.
And do you have any advice for when you are picking a course?
Yeah, I definitely say try and find perhaps someone who's done the course or try and delve a little bit more deeply into what you're actually going to learn in the course. I think there's no point in doing 4 different intro to picture book courses at 4 different places because you're possibly going to learn a lot of the same things, how many words in a picture book, how many pages, that type of thing. So if you've done one, then try and find something else that can build on those skills that you've already learned.
Amazing. That's really interesting. And whereabouts do you do these courses?
So they can be held in lots of different places. The most common ones are probably with the writing organisation. So there's Australian Writers Centre, Writing New South Wales, Victoria Writers, and I'm sure other states have similar sort of professional writing centres. I am also about to do one at the State Library coming up in a couple of weeks about using the collection, which is really interesting because I do have an idea for a historical middle grade. You can also do them through other authors. There's TAFE, there's university, and there's also private courses.
Wow. Another way that you could spend money is conferences. Now, I've never been to a conference, but from my understanding, it's a great way to learn. It's also a great way to network. So you can meet publishers. You may even have the opportunity to pitch or have your manuscript assessed. Have you ever been to a conference?
I have never been to a conference. I've just never had the money because depending on where it is, you can also have those additional costs of travel and accommodation. But lots of my writer friends have been and they've gotten so much out of them. Some have even, met with a publisher that's gone on to publish their book. So that's pretty exciting.
That's so exciting. What are some other ways that we could spend money?
So entering creative writing competitions is a good way to get your work out there. And often there is a small entry fee to enter a competition. The thing to remember with competitions is that they are taste-based. So the judges are judging by their taste. So even if you don't win or get shortlisted, that does not mean your writing is no good. We just don't know what the judges are looking for. We don't know what's going to appeal to them. And I remember one of my kids entered a creative writing competition when they were in primary school and they wrote this story all about gambling for lollies in the playground. And I was horrified. I thought, what on earth are the judges going to think about this story? And they thought it was amazing. They thought it was really imaginative. And he came second in that competition. So I thought it was horrific. The judges really enjoyed it.
That's amazing. One thing to remember as well, when I was in primary school, I entered a competition. It was a horror story competition and I didn't win and nothing really came of it. But that story that I wrote ended up being the piece of work that was submitted to the high school I ended up going to, and that's how I was put into the gifted and talented class. So even the experience of writing for the competition and having that goal in mind and having a finished story, something came of it, even if I didn't win that competition.
Yeah, so they can be quite motivating, can't they? Because you've got a deadline. Yes. And sometimes you also have, a idea that you have to follow for your story. So that can be a really good way for people who often find it hard to get started on finishing a piece of writing.
And we are entering the Living Stories competition, which is happening in Western Sydney at the moment. I know that you're still working on your story and I've just submitted mine. And at first with the theme is It True? I was so stuck on the theme, and I was spent days or maybe even weeks thinking, what on earth could I write? And then when I actually had an idea and was able to write it and link it to the theme, like, it's such a good feeling. One thing that I have been seeing online and on social media a lot is the opportunity to have your manuscript assessed. So I've never done this again, although I am interested in it. So it's a professional editor or even an author, I believe, that does manuscript assessments. So the cost varies depending on the length. A picture book assessment is probably going to be cheaper than a YA or a middle grade. Have you ever had your manuscripts assessed?
I haven't, but I do have lots of friends who have done this, and it's been really valuable just getting that extra set of eyes, because when you write something, you're so close to it, you can't see it clearly anymore. Just an independent person can come in and say, okay, this is working, love this is great. Can you give this character a little bit more of an arc, or just whatever needs changing if it's structure. Then you can go even further and get your work actually copy edited if you're not great with spelling and grammar and things like that. You can also pay someone to do that. So I think, getting a manuscript assessment, if you have the money, could be a really great way to spend your money.
And also a really great way to get a look into the industry to see what they're looking for and what the experience might be like to work with an editor, especially if you've never had something that's a passion project edited. You might be in for a rude awakening. So it could actually be really good to have that practice.
That is a really great way to look at it, because, we maybe have never had our work critiqued. We've never had someone want us to explain why we've given a character this, journey or anything. So, that's really a really good point. I love that.
Another way that you could potentially spend quite a lot of money is through self-publishing. So I have never self-published, but I have received multiple offers to self-publish or hybrid traditional self-publishing. Some people do like a hybrid model. And when you are getting rejected over and over, or even worse, hearing nothing at all when you're submitting your manuscript, it can be gut-wrenching. So when you receive an email from a publisher saying, we love your story, we would love to publish it, and paragraphs down you find out, for this huge sum, and you find out about the financial commitment, it can be really heartwarming because they love your story, but also devastating because you have to pay and sometimes you can't afford that. So I think that it could be a good option if you just want your story out there and you have the money and you just would love to hold your book in your hands. But if you are still looking for traditional publishing, it can be a little bit gut-wrenching to get those emails.
Yeah, I can see how that would be so, just a real trigger to think, maybe I do need to shell out this money because this is my baby and I want it to go out into the world. I have actually got a couple of friends who have self-published and their books have turned out absolutely beautifully. But I've also seen in my work as a librarian and things, some other self-published things that perhaps don't look very professional. And I do feel very sad for those people that they have spent a lot of money on producing something that is perhaps not the best it could be.
Yeah, that's really hard. And especially if all you know is what you've heard online, or all you know is what you're reading in the emails. If you don't have anyone that's in the industry or anyone that's been traditionally published, you might think, this is the only way to get my book out there. So maybe just be wary and just read every contract really thoroughly and make the best decision for you.
Yeah, and there are also organisations such as the Australian Society of Author, and they can help you look at contracts and things like that. So I'll just say, just be very careful. Don't sign anything. Don't spend any money unless you've fully investigated exactly what it is that you're going to be getting.
Yeah, definitely. Now, earlier you said that you had done some creative writing courses. What are some other creative writing resources that you've spent money on?
So I don't know if this is a creative writing resource as such, but I do believe it's supporting the industry and helping me to connect with other creators, and that is my CBCA membership, so Children's Book Council of Australia. I love supporting this organisation. I can attend networking events. Aside from that, it just is a really good organisation because it really champions books, creators, and it champions the children. Children's Book Week is all about producing these great books for children, which is what we're all on about. And also last year I was very lucky. I was one of the first winners of the Margaret Hamilton Creators Residency, which was through CBCA.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was an amazing experience. And CBCA are hopefully going to keep doing that in coming years, and that was a really amazing experience. Something else I do, which also is in a way contributing to my creativity, but also just supporting the industry, is that I buy a lot of books. I'm a librarian. I have access to plenty of books, but I still like to buy books.
I love that too. I do buy a lot of books as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to support authors, to show that I'm interested in the industry, to keep up my own knowledge about what's being published. And sometimes you just want to own a book because it's just a lovely, almost like a piece of art, particularly picture books. I love to own them. And one final thing that I do spend money on, and I am challenged at the moment to perhaps take this a little bit more seriously, is my website. I paid for my own .com, joestaker.com years ago. I have not utilized that to its full potential. I've been a bit lax, but nobody else can .com my name because I bought it.
That's a tale as old as time. I think we all have a WordPress or a .com that we're not using to its full potential. So maybe that can be a secondary challenge. We all get on there and update our websites.
All right, I'm going to do that this week.
Okay, we'll check in next week.
Okay, and what about you, Sarah? What have you spent money on chasing your dreams?
Well, I am a young mum. I'm 26 and I've got 2 toddlers. They're 2 and 4. So there's not a ton of wiggle room in the budget to be spending money on memberships and courses and conferences. But I have found heaps of free resources, and there's so much out there for free. You don't need to spend money. Some of my favorites are Brandon Sanderson's YouTube lectures. They have been amazing for me when trying to tackle the bigger writing pieces, and he really goes into plot and characters, and I've found that so valuable. I also love David Perell's podcast, How I Write. So he interviews writers of all different kinds, like historical writers, poets, and even just really famous authors, and they talk about their process and how they write. I also love that you can do free courses online. Like MIT has free courses on fueling your passion for storytelling, and I'm sure there are so many others out there.
Yeah, there's so many, and a couple of podcasts that I really like listening to. One is the Book Deal podcast. There's 3 authors who host that. There's Tina Strawn, who's a children's author, and then there's 2 adult authors, Madeline Cleary and Natasha Rye. I love that one. And then I also like the Amy Kaufman on Writing podcast. She hasn't put anything up for a while, but if you go back and listen to them, they are so good, and they're not very long, which I like as well. They're really good. And if you like things that are not too long, another one of my favorite free things is children's author Michael Wagner. During COVID, made a series on YouTube called Think Like an Author, and they're quite short, really easy to listen to, very, very wise. I've learned a lot from those. I particularly like the episode entitled You're Never Too Old to Become an Author. That's my favorite.
That's so cool.
Another great free resource we can use are our local libraries. So local libraries often have free author talks and free workshops and things like that. Plus, they have an amazing number of books about writing, and also magazines. If you go into one of the e-magazine platforms like Libby, there are also creative writing magazines that you can read for free via the library.
Another amazing free resource are critique groups. So you can find your local critique group or maybe an online one, and those are amazing for getting feedback, supporting each other, celebrating successes. One exciting event we went to through our critique group was the book launch for Shelley Unwin for her book Wait a Minute, and that was really awesome to go to a book launch, and we saw the publisher, you saw everyone that was supporting the author, and you got to be a part of that experience. So book launches are another amazing resource.
Yeah,
that's free.
Yeah, and something to remember is you don't need to know the author to go to a book launch. It's not just a family and friends affair. You can go to any book launch and just love the vibe. Particularly as authors, we know what it takes to put a book out into the world. We can empathize with the number of years that they have spent trying to get their book published, and we can celebrate with that person even if we don't know them.
And you can imagine how exciting it would be if you had your own book launch and people you didn't know turned up. Like, that would be such a motivating, encouraging thing to have other aspiring authors or fellow authors come and to share in your passion. That would be so cool.
That would be really, really cool. Something else we can do is also go onto the websites for different organisations. I know that Writing New South Wales has a lot of information on their website, and Writers Victoria, they have these excellent things on their website called the writing workouts, and I want to do all of them. They look so fun, and they look like just a really interesting way to improve your writing.
Are they writing prompts? What are they?
Yeah, they're sort of writing prompts with extra bits added in, and they're just really interesting, like things I've never seen before. Yeah, so we'll tag them in our show notes, and you can look at our show notes on the Society of Unpublished Authors.com.
Yes, that's so interesting. I'll have to look into that. Another thing that we have been working on as well is social media presence. So that is free. You can open social media accounts. There are little ways that they will try and get you to spend money in verifying your account or paying for pushing your content out, but we don't do any of that. We just use the free options, and that's such a good way to build community, build an online presence, and also put a face to the name. Sometimes when you're putting yourself out there, you want publishers to be able to find you, and if you have a positive social media where you're putting out content, showing your passion, that's probably a really great thing for publishers to stumble upon if they're looking you up.
Yeah, because they want to be able to find you online. Something else we did this week was we asked some of our fellow creators what their best ideas were of things that they could do for free and things that they could spend money on to help them in their writing careers, and this is what they had to say.
Hi, I'm Amanda Lieber, a picture book author. I also write fairy tales and dabble in short stories in middle grade. The first thing I did was join a networking organization such as the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I found this invaluable to my writing experience, not only through networking, but I also joined a critique group, and through various events, I met publishers, had assessments on my manuscripts, which eventually led to my first book being published. I have also attended many courses with the Australian Writers' Centre, including character development, plotting, freelance writing. I feel that paying for these courses has actually given me the grounding that I needed to chip away, especially at that old imposter syndrome. And it has given me confidence in my skill and my ability. In saying that, I listen to loads of podcasts which are free. I do Google random stuff online that's all free. But for me, having paid for the courses run by professional authors and other professionals in the industry has been invaluable.
Hi, this is kids book author Liz Ledden sharing some tips on some free things that you can do to help with your writing. Essentially, podcasts, libraries, and events. Firstly, listen to podcast interviews with favourite authors to get lots of tips on how they approach writing. Of course, check out this podcast, but also Words and Nerds has a really great back catalogue, which you can listen to as well. Plus, there are some book podcasts that interview publishers, so you can get lots of insights into how to get published. Writers Off the Page has a really great series of these, and also check out the Book Deal podcast. As for libraries, borrow books on the craft of writing for a free masterclass, and use the kids' book section to read up and research what's being published and who by. Finally, there are loads of free events at local bookshops, like launches and talks, and also check out huge festival programs like the upcoming Sydney Writers' Festival for some of their free programs. Have fun and happy writing.
Picture book author Artelle Lenthall had this to say.
Carolyn Eldridge Elfonzetti, a very wise writer friend, once told me not to feel guilty when I was talking about spending money on local writers' festival, as well as books, competitions, etc. She said if nothing else, it's a hobby, and we wouldn't think twice on spending that on golf or gardening or other hobbies. On the other point, hands down, the best free resource is a critique group. You may need to try a few to find your perfect fit, but when you do, it's worth more than gold.
Hi, I'm Melissa Kelly. I am an unpublished author of picture books, and I try to treat writing like a profession, and I've invested in courses through the Australian Writers' Centre. I have a CBCA subscription, but that kind of helps with my teacher librarian job as well. Every now and then I pay for a manuscript assessment, and those have been some of the most valuable turning points in my growth. I've learnt far more about marketing than I ever expected to, thanks to the generous guidance of Mary Anastasia and the connections that came with that. I jump into every free course I can find, and once I even bid on a charity auction just to have a video chat with Jackie French. I put money into my writing when I can, and I'm considering a mentorship, but I haven't quite taken the plunge yet.
Hi Joe and Sarah. It's Zoe Gaetjens here. I write across different kid lit categories, but most recently I have a young adult novel called Drawing Nudes While Making Other Plans coming out in May. In terms of the best things that I have spent money on, I would probably say my Squibby membership, and then paying to attend the Squibby writing retreat that they held a couple of years ago, and also Squibby professional development days. I think those have been fantastic and have given me different opportunities, particularly chances to meet different people. In terms of what has been free, though, probably I'm speaking to the converted here, but podcasts are such a wonderful resource. You can listen to an interview with almost anyone, so you can learn so much about the industry and about different people. So keep listening.
All right, Sarah, is there anything else we can do to help us follow our dreams and help us with our writing?
At some point, we have to stop doing courses and write.
What?
I think that we're both guilty of this. We do a lot of research and we do a lot of learning, and sometimes that is in the form of procrastination and it's stopping us from actually sitting down and doing the thing. So maybe we need to just write, and that's probably the only way our writing will get better, is to practice and to keep writing.
Yeah, and have confidence in ourselves. We don't actually need a piece of paper that says we've attended a course or done this specific thing to be a writer. There's writers throughout the ages who have done no professional courses on writing, and they are well-loved writers. They've been published. They have audiences that really like their work. Yes, so I think you're right. I think we need to write.
And one thing as well, some of the information is really contradictory. So you might have one author say that you have to plot and this is how you plot. And you might have another say, well, that ruins the magic. You should just write and let the story move through you. So if you are just doing the research and not doing the writing, you might not actually be able to find what works for you. So I would say just get out there and write.
Yeah, that can be really confusing on the actual right way to write, but there is no right way.
Yes.
Whatever works for you.
Yes. How do you justify spending money on something that might never pay you back?
I think you can justify it by treating your writing as a passion as well as something that you would hope to make money from. You may not make money from your writing, but it can still be a passion. It can be still something that you love and still something that you want to get better at. And I think there's nothing wrong with spending money on something that you're passionate about and you want to improve on. If you were wanting to learn to play tennis and get better at tennis, you'd pay for tennis lessons. So why not spend some money on your writing?
And on that thought, I spend a lot of money every year on my 4-year-old daughter's ballet lessons. And it's quite a lot of money to invest in something that's not really going anywhere. She's not going to be a prima ballerina in the next year, and you're spending a lot on costumes and classes and concerts, but you're also just investing in them having fun and them socializing and building skills, and she loves to dance. That's a passion of hers. So even though there's no return on this investment, it's still worth investing in, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable way to look at our writing as well. And we've talked a lot today about chasing our dreams, and that sounds quite wishy-washy. What if we transformed the way we spoke about this, and instead of calling it chasing our dreams, we did call it investing in our passion?
That's really interesting, and having a different mindset instead of having something that's so far distant and so far removed, have it as you're taking steps to achieve something.
Yeah, so we should actually spend even more money, I think. It's investing.
Get our investments up. And one thing that we were thinking about too is that although it may not be something that makes money as a full-time career, you can still make money and have it be alongside your regular career or your 9-to-5 or however that looks for you. And that's still worthwhile, even if it's just finding little pockets of time. And
yeah, absolutely. And that's something we're going to talk about in our future episodes. For us, we do have paid jobs. We have careers already. So our writing is something that we're fitting in alongside that. So we're going to talk about that in a future episode.
And have you got a challenge for us this week?
I think my challenge for this week is I'm going to go back and revisit the things I've already done. I'm going to try not to get distracted by a shiny new fun thing I could do. I'm going to go back, look at the course notes, look at the modules and things that I have already saved, and just make sure I've got that most value out of the money that I have already spent. And I'm also going to take a look at my website.
Yes, and get onto that website. I maybe will have a dawdle onto my website too. I'm not sure. But I think I will take my own advice and just spend the week writing.
That's a great way of using your time, and that's an excellent investment.
Yes.
That's it from us this week. You can find links to everything we've spoken about today on our website, thesocietyofunpublishedauthors.com.
And you can find us both on Instagram at jo_diggs and author Sarah Della Piedra. And our Instagram for the podcast is the Society of Unpublished Authors.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.